When Joyce Gladwell, at 96 years old, decided to sell her home, she gave her family a firm warning: under no circumstances should anyone enter the basement. Despite her caution, the new owners couldn't resist their curiosity. What they discovered inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. Joyce sat quietly in her living room, her daughter by her side. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her tea. "My dear," she began, her voice shaky, "I've made the decision to sell the house." Her daughter stared at her, taken aback. "But you've lived here for so many years. Are you sure?" Joyce nodded with certainty. "Yes, it's time, but there's something you need to know." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Whatever you do, never open the basement door. Promise me." Her daughter frowned, confused. "I promise, but why? What's down there?" Joyce's eyes grew distant, as though she was lost in a place far from the present. She turned to the window, silent. Her daughter waited for an explanation that never came, leaving the mystery of the basement hanging between them. The following day, Joyce contacted Vaziri Real Estate. The phone rang through the quiet of the afternoon before Gladys, the elder of the two sisters running the successful Toronto agency, answered. "Vaziri Real Estate, Gladys speaking. How can I assist you today?" A frail voice replied, "This is Joyce Gladwell. I need to sell my house." Detecting something unusual in the woman's tone, Gladys motioned for her sister Carla to join the conversation. "Of course, Mrs. Gladwell. We'd be happy to help. Could you tell me a bit about your property?" What followed was one of the most peculiar exchanges the Vaziri sisters had ever experienced. Joyce dodged direct questions, responded with vague comments, and although hesitant, she was adamant about the sale. "I've been here for 72 years, Joyce finally revealed, "but the time has come. It's time." Intrigued and unsettled, Gladys and Carla agreed to meet Joyce the following day. After hanging up, they exchanged uneasy glances. "What's your take?" Carla asked, brow furrowed. Gladys shook her head. "I'm not sure, but I have a feeling this isn't going to be just another house sale." When the sisters arrived at Joyce's house the next day, they were surprised to see how unassuming it was. A charming 1940s home, quiet and unremarkable from the outside. But something felt different. It looked like any other house on the street, blending seamlessly with its neighbors. Nothing about the exterior hinted at the remarkable secrets it held inside. Joyce answered the door after the third knock, standing tall despite her age. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, and her blue eyes held the weight of decades of untold stories. "Come in," she said, her voice noticeably stronger than it had sounded on the phone. "You can tour the house, but the basement is off limits." Gladys and Carla exchanged a quick, curious glance before stepping inside. What greeted them was nothing short of extraordinary. Joyce's home was like a vivid time capsule from the mid-20th century. Each room boasted a different bold color: emerald green in the living room, sunny yellow in the kitchen, and deep coral in the dining room. The vintage furniture, spotless and perfectly preserved, filled every corner. Carla, wide-eyed, whispered, "Oh my, Mrs. Gladwell, your home is amazing." Joyce offered a modest smile. "Thank you, dear. I've always had a knack for design. Now, let me show you around." As they followed Joyce and her daughter through the house, the sisters' awe only grew. Every room appeared as if it had been untouched by time. The living room even had a vintage TV, complete with rabbit ear antennas. "Mrs. Joyce," Gladys asked, clearly struck by the immaculate condition, "how have you managed to keep everything so pristine?" Joyce's eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. "Oh, a bit of care goes a long way, and maybe a touch of magic." The tour continued, each room more striking than the last. The main bedroom was a regal purple, and the guest room was entirely pink. But one thing caught their attention more than anything else: the basement door. Unlike the rest of the house, it stood out, an unsettling presence in an otherwise perfect home. The basement door was plain and unadorned, secured with nothing more than a simple padlock. "Remember, Joyce said sternly, "The basement is off limits. It's not part of the tour, and it won't be included in the sale." Her daughter's expression darkened with concern at the mention of the basement, but Gladys and Carla only nodded, their curiosity piqued. What could possibly be so secretive down there? As they wrapped up the tour, the sisters knew they had stumbled upon something remarkable. The house, with all its unique character, would surely fetch a high price, mystery basement or not. "Mrs. Joyce," Gladys said, "it would be an honor to list your home. It's truly one of a kind." Joyce gave a small nod, a mix of relief and sadness crossing her face. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I knew you two were the right people for this. But please promise me one thing." "Of course," Carla replied. "When you find a buyer, make sure they understand. The basement must remain closed. Always." The sisters agreed, though the warning left them unsettled. As they left the house, a chill ran down their spines. This home held more secrets than met the eye, and they felt an undeniable urge to uncover the truth. In the following weeks, Joyce's house became a sensation in the Toronto real estate market. Open houses were packed with potential buyers, all enchanted by the home's charm and flawless preservation. Yet with each showing, the mystery of the basement deepened. As Joyce's family helped her pack up her belongings, the tension surrounding the basement only grew. "Mom," her daughter asked one day, "don't you think it's time to tell us what's really down there?" Joyce shook her head, her expression firm. "It's better if you don't know. Promise me, you'll never try to find out." Though they agreed, the curiosity was palpable. Rumors soon began to swirl. Some whispered that Joyce had been a Cold War spy, with classified documents locked away in the basement. Others speculated about hidden treasures or priceless artifacts. A few ventured into darker territory, suggesting the basement concealed evidence of an old unsolved crime. Through it all, Joyce remained silent, refusing to indulge anyone's curiosity about what lay behind the locked door. As the bidding war for the house heated up, so did the speculation. The Vaziri sisters found themselves answering increasingly outlandish questions from potential buyers. Finally, after months of intrigue, a buyer emerged. The Warren family, John, Sarah, and their 2 children, fell in love with the home's retro allure. They didn't seem bothered by the stipulation about the basement. When the sale was finalized, Joyce gathered everyone in the living room for one final warning. "I know you're all curious about the basement," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I need you all to promise me that you'll never, ever try to come around and open that door, not even after I'm gone." Her children nodded seriously, though the mystery weighed heavily on their minds. As they locked up the house for the last time, Joyce's family couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving behind more than just a building. They were leaving behind a secret that had shaped their lives in ways they couldn't understand. On the day of the closing, Joyce insisted on being present. She pulled Sarah Warren aside as the papers were signed and keys exchanged. "Remember," Joyce said, her voice low and urgent, "no matter what you hear, no matter how curious you become, do not open that basement door. Promise me." Sarah, surprised by the old woman's intensity, nodded. "I promise, Mrs. Gladwell, we'll respect your wishes." With that, Joyce left her home of 72 years for the last time, leaving behind a legacy of beauty, mystery, and unanswered questions. The Warrens moved in the following week, excited to start their new life in the charming vintage home. At first, everything was perfect. They loved how well kept the house was, feeling like they were stepping back in time each time they walked through the front door. But soon, they noticed some odd things about the house. There was a persistent musty smell coming from the direction of the basement. They also heard occasional creaking and settling noises, which they initially thought were just because the house was old. As months passed, Sarah noticed water stains forming on the living room floor near the basement door. Worried about potential damage, John decided it was time to investigate, despite Joyce's warning. After all, the old woman had passed away a few weeks earlier, and he felt less guilty about breaking their promise now that she was no longer alive. With some hesitation, he and Sarah unlocked the basement door and went downstairs. What they found was surprising, but far less than they'd expected. The basement was filled with decades' worth of belongings, old furniture, boxes of papers, and various antiques. More concerning was the visible water damage on one wall, with mold starting to form. It was clear there was a serious foundation issue that needed to be fixed. But as they carefully moved through the cluttered space, John discovered something unexpected: a hidden door behind an old bookshelf. Curious, they opened it and found a small, concealed room. Inside, they found stacks of old newspapers and magazines dating back to the 1930s, carefully preserved. Boxes were also filled with wartime ration books, victory bonds, and other World War II-era memorabilia. It seemed Joyce had been a collector and archivist of local history, but the most intriguing discovery was a collection of journals. As Sarah flipped through them, she realized they contained Joyce's personal accounts of life during the Great Depression and World War II, offering a vivid glimpse into those turbulent times from a local perspective. The Warrens now understood why Joyce had been so protective of the basement. It wasn't just a storage space, but a carefully curated time capsule of her life and the history she had lived through. The family was deeply moved by the historical significance of their discovery. The Warrens quickly contacted Joyce's family, who were astonished by the discovery. Joyce's daughter explained that her mother had always been very private about her past, and this hidden collection revealed why. Together, the Warrens and Joyce's family meticulously cataloged the items: World War II ration books, victory bonds, and rare newspapers announcing significant historical events. The most valuable find, however, was Joyce's personal journals, which offered a vivid account of life during the Depression and wartime in Toronto. After much discussion, they decided to donate most of the items to the local historical society. The curator was thrilled, calling it one of the most comprehensive personal collections from that era. Joyce's legacy would now educate future generations about life in mid-20th century Canada. The basement itself required repairs. John and Sarah hired contractors to fix the water damage and mold issues, and added proper waterproofing to prevent further problems. Once the work was completed, they transformed the space into a cozy family room, incorporating some of Joyce's vintage furniture to keep the house's unique character. They also kept a few select items from the hidden room, showcasing them in a small display case in the basement. It became a conversation piece and a tribute to the home's rich history. The Warrens frequently shared Joyce's story with friends and family, marveling at their unexpected connection to the home's previous owner. What had started as a mystery turned into a celebration of one woman's extraordinary life. The Warrens felt honored to be the caretakers of such a special history, and their home took on new significance. As for Joyce's warning about the basement, the family speculated that she may have been concerned about the water damage or wished to protect her private collection. Whatever her reason, they were grateful they had investigated, as it allowed them to preserve both the house and its hidden treasures. Have you ever found something unexpected in an old house or come across family heirlooms with rich histories? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more intriguing tales.